You know, when it comes to spending your free time doing something, a lot of people in this world like to spend their free time in multiple different ways. A lot of people like to go out with their friends and spend time with them. A lot of people would prefer to stay at home and maybe read or play video games or anything like that. Well, in the case of a Scottish man in the 1800s, his free time was something that we like to call bagging peaks, and that is quite literally the entire lore of the game Peaks of Yore, released on October 26, 2023, developed by Andreas Grube Jensen. I know I'm butchering the fuck out of that. It is basically just a game about climbing a bunch of mountains and becoming one of the best mountain climbers in the area. And I kind of want to go over it and talk about why I think it is quite possibly one of the best climbing games ever made. But first, we need to go into a little bit of background leading up to this game when it comes to different games that have a similar formula. Now, when it comes to games about climbing mountains, Peaks of Yore definitely is not the first, as there has been numerous games before this that have had similar concepts or similar gameplay when it comes to climbing up very, very tall mountains, such as games like Getting Over It, Celeste, a difficult game about climbing, Pogo Stuck, Jump King. There's many games that have similar aspects of going up a really tall mountain and possibly falling, meaning that you lose a bunch of progress. However, Peaks of Yore takes this in one of the most unique approaches that I've seen in these types of games, where you are in a first-person perspective and you have to physically use your hands to climb up this mountain. Every mountain has a bunch of rocks and little spots that you can grab onto with your hands, and you can use momentum by swinging to allow yourself to be able to swing to different types of rocks, as well as there's a bunch of tools that we'll get into in a little bit that you can use to help yourself. So when you first start up a brand new save file in Peaks of Yore, you start off in your little cabin. It's fairly quiet and it looks pretty nice. And on your table, you will find the first book of mountains that you will start climbing. And when you load into the first mountain, you will be greeted by a man at the top of the mountain asking you if you're ready to take on the peak bagging challenge, which is pretty much just the entire game where you start off at the first mountain and you climb every single mountain up until you get to the very last one. And this first mountain is basically just the simplest tutorial that you can get. It teaches you how to use both your hands, it teaches you how to use momentum by swinging, and by the end of it, you get pretty much the most basic idea of how to climb in the game. Now, as you do progress through the Book of Mountains that you have, the mountains do in fact get a little bit more complicated as you go on. But it's not such a giant leap in difficulty that it's going to feel impossible. It just means that you kind of have to use the game mechanics to the best of your advantage and try and figure things out. And as you go through the mountains, you will eventually start equipping more tools that can actually assist you in getting through these mountains easier. Such as you first get the 6-point crampons, which are basically like spike boots that you have that you can use to jump off of a mountain to get a little bit extra leap, as well as just being able to stick your feet in the wall in case your hands are getting tired from certain rocks that drain your stamina. And you also get things like rope and nails, which is basically just like a little safety net of yours where you can stick a nail in a mountain and you will basically just have a rope where if you fall, you will just fall as far as the rope goes down, letting you climb yourself back up. You will also get stuff like coffee, which just gives you short little energy boosts, and chalk, which chalk can basically use to be put on your hands, so that way you can have a stronger grip, and your grip will last pretty much infinitely until the chalk wears off of your hands. So the game does in fact try to be a bit of a realistic climbing simulator, as well as just having enough difficulty to where it still feels realistic, but it's not like an impossible mountain or anything. It's basically just, you know, difficult mountains that you have to use your tools and your game knowledge to try and overcome. And once you finish all the mountains in the first book, somebody does come to your door to tell you, hey, you're doing pretty good. How about you try this next little book of mountains, which has less mountains, and this is because the second book of mountains is pretty much short little bouldering sections, where it basically teaches you how to have quick reactions and quick reflexes, pretty much just giving you chances to learn how to just play the game a bit faster. And during this Book of Mountains, you don't have your crampons, you don't have your ropes, you don't have pretty much any of your tools. So you're pretty much just going into these mountains bare bones, as the game wants to teach you how to deal with these situations in a quick and timely manner. And honestly, they are really fun. A lot of them do teach you about new mechanics that you may not have tried during the previous mountains. And overall, they're actually just really fun little quick bouldering sections. And pretty much just having this much of an arsenal with all of these tools like the coffee, rope, chalk, crampons, pretty much all of it, by the time you get to the last couple mountains in the first book, it really seems to be like you pretty much have everything you need to succeed. And the mountains do in fact get taller by the end of the first book. So by the last mountain, pretty much, you'll have everything you need, and pretty much it all just relies on how much you learned in the game from what you were playing to be able to succeed in the last mountains, pretty much. Now, if you thought that the second book of Mountains, or the quick bouldering sections, was just kind of like a little bit of extra gameplay for people who finished the main game, turns out you're wrong. Because once you finish the bouldering section, somebody comes to your door and gives you another book of Mountains. This time, the mountains are pretty much everything you learned from the slow and tricky gameplay of the first mountains to the quick time reactions and just overall speediness of the second book of mountains, all combined into a bunch of just really tall mountains. And with these mountains, they are really tall. Some of them need you to jump from one giant mountain to another giant mountain, and a lot of them just have really difficult sections. And it all leads up to the final mountain in the third book, Ymir's Shadow, which is pretty much like a gauntlet of everything you learned from the game up to that point. And that mountain, in my opinion, is basically like where the game kind of shines, pretty much. At least in terms of just like the main three books, because it pretty much has everything. It has all the different types of rocks. You get to use every single tool that you got up to that point. And the game basically tells you, great, you learned everything. Now take on our final challenge. And honestly, Ymir's Shadow was actually quite a fun mountain, as you pretty much just went straight up. There wasn't so many sections where you had to go horizontal. And it actually was just a pretty fun mountain overall. And after the long struggle of going up and down on Ymir's Shadow, you pretty much finish the game once you reach the top. You get the 10-point crampons, and you pretty much become an official member of the Official Ascension Society, or the OAS, in Peaks of Yore. And that's pretty much where the game ends. God, if only I was right. Could you really imagine if the ending of the game was Ymir's Shadow and the game just ended and there wasn't any more content? By the time you finish Ymir's Shadow, you now have the option to get sent to the Great Northern Range, which is pretty much the North Pole, if you will. It is snowing, it is freezing, and you take on the next mountain in the game, the Great Bulwark of the North. Now, let me just clarify this real quick. In the game, you have an item known as a barometer. And with that barometer, you can pretty much see how high a mountain is, as well as if there's any collectibles on the mountain, which we will get into in a little bit. Ymir's Shadow was about, let's say, about like 500 meters in how tall it was. A pretty difficult mountain, considering that was the last mountain in the three books, and it was definitely the tallest mountain you have climbed up to that point. Now, the Great Bulwark of the North is 2,200 meters, which is significantly taller than Ymir's Shadow, as well as, because you're in the Great Northern Range, you have the new mechanic of the ice pickaxes, because there is ice everywhere on the mountain and not a lot of places for you to grab onto rocks. Meaning, you have to use these ice pickaxes, which are pretty much just like grabbing onto rocks, except you have to be a little bit more specific since they're at one point. And you pretty much have to use them and climb up this 2,200-meter mountain, all while dealing with everything up to that point, such as avalanches, wind, and just like a bunch of other stuff that can happen. And falling down this mountain really sucks because there's not a lot for you to grab onto. Also, because of how fast you're going, it's not easy for you to just use your pickaxes, since your pickaxes kind of have this thing where if you hold them out for too long, they kind of just slide around a bunch. So it's very hard for you to just kind of like grab onto something with your pickaxes or just grab anything in general. So falling does mean a lot more. And by this point in the game, you pretty much learn even more movement at this point. With the most obvious one being that if you use your crampons while pulling yourself up with your spacebar at the same time, you can get an insane kind of jump that just sends you flying in the air. That is pretty much like a new tech that like people learn fairly quickly on in the game. And in the Great Bulwark, it's definitely necessary for some sections, because there's just some sections in the game that are on that mountain that are just so unbearably hard to do. But at the end of the day, it is a pretty complicated mountain, but if you've learned everything up to that point, then you should have a decent amount of time climbing it, but it just makes it feel that much more satisfying once you get to the top. However, as much as I would like to say that the Great Bulwark is the final challenge in Peaks of Yore, we do have one more mountain, and this mountain is quite possibly the hardest mountain I have ever seen or climbed in any video game. The Great Solemn Tempest. This is the final, I promise, the final mountain that is in Peaks of Yore. And it has taken everything from the first book of mountains to the bouldering to all the mountains up to Ymir's Shadow and the Great Bulwark of the North. It takes everything you've learned and everything you might have not learned and put it into a godforsaken, undescribable 7,500-meter mountain. This mountain is quite literally the tallest mountain in any video game. Quite possibly the tallest mountain I've ever seen, to be fair. I mean, the closest we have is Mount Everest, but a lot of people have mentioned that due to some things with Mount Everest, technically, Solemn Tempest is taller than it, which is insane to think about because it is a mountain in a video game. But the Solemn Tempest is by far the biggest gauntlet of a mountain I have seen. This mountain alone overshadows everything from getting over its mountain to the entire mountain gameplay of Celeste to a difficult game about climbing to Pogo Stuck. It takes all of these other games about mountains and every mountain in Peaks of Yore and just says, no, this is a mountain. And it has every right to call itself a mountain. It has very difficult jumps. It has a lot of very difficult sequences where you're going to have to just leap and hope that you grab something. It has a lot of big avalanches. It has a lot of jumps that involves you having to swing up something and then cramp and jump because you just can't get enough distance to it just to be able to make it to a patch of ice or a rock. It also has just insane horizontal sections where you're jumping from ice spike to ice spike, pretty much going across in a horizontal section, which means you're not even going up, you're pretty much just going sideways. You're not even going up the mountain at that point. And there's multiple sections like that in this game. There's multiple sections where you have to swing off of dead people, where you have to grab a dead person's body who's attached to a rope and swing your way around to get to new sections on the mountain. There is constant wind, and the wind on this mountain is so much more brutal than the wind in any other mountain, pretty much allowing it to just push you off of the mountain if you choose to just fly in the air. The wind could just push you off of the mountain, and by that point, you are screwed. There is so much to this mountain, and every few thousand meters, it introduces new mechanics that you may have not seen before, whether it be from all the older mountains or even the Bulwark. You may not have seen these types of mechanics before, but you are learning everything up to this point. Not to mention using every single tool that you have at your advantage. I will admit, I probably beat Solemn Tempest in the worst way imaginable, as it's suggested by the community a bunch that in order to beat Solemn Tempest, you should go back through levels and get all the collectibles. Which, yes, there are collectibles at all the mountains that you can get, which will give you extra ropes, more coffee, more chalk, and pretty much just a bunch of upgrades that will help you conquer the Solemn Tempest. But me, I went into the Solemn Tempest with 20 ropes, barely any coffee or chalk, and pretty much just winged it, and just said, I'm gonna try and do this just because I think it's funny. And somehow I managed to conquer the Solemn Tempest with this loadout. And for anyone that's just getting into the game, I do not recommend going into Solemn Tempest without the proper upgrades. Because without the proper upgrades, you're pretty much going to have to go through this entire mountain with like using little to none of your items until you get to about like the 6,000 meter range, which by that point the mountain's pretty much finished if you're taking your time. Overall though, this mountain is a lot of fun though, despite the fact that it is 7,500 meters and it is pretty much just a ungodly mountain. Like, it is just so tall, and the amount of puzzles that you have to do on it are just so incredibly difficult. But by the end of it, once you complete the Solemn Tempest, you are now promoted to the new president of the official Ascension Society, and that is pretty much where the game ends.
All right, lads and lasses, if you would kindly line up here in front of these beautiful mountains. Settle down, everyone, please. Let's have the new president line up here in the middle, please. Good. Sir, perhaps we should leave the smoking pipe just for a moment. All right, suit yourself. Lads, how about you put down the coffee for a moment as well? What the hell? Okay, folks, here we go. Look at me now. Now, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Now, Peaks of Yore does have a lot of extra post-game content that you could do, such as it does have the time trials, which are pretty much just like little speed runs where you pretty much get a stopwatch and you can pretty much time yourself and beat a bunch of records. And actually, if you beat all of the bouldering levels using the time trials, you unlock a smoking pipe, which just gives you kind of like passive boosts to, you know, just increase your strength. Another item I would suggest you get before playing Solemn Tempest. The game does have other game modes known as such as You Fall, You Die, which it's in the name. If you fall down a mountain, you die. Really going for the realism there, thanks. As well as the free soloing mode, which is pretty much playing all of the mountains, including Solemn Tempest, without ropes. And I have been playing Solemn Tempest without trying to beat it without ropes for possibly the past few weeks, and trust me, if I had struggles using 20 ropes, using no ropes has just been a godforsaken nightmare. But I am still grinding at it because I just think the game is fun, and it's possibly one of my new favorite climbing games, like, of all time. Because the movement in the game is great, and learning new things like this, like the swimming tech that I've heard some people say, where pretty much if you use crampon jumps while flinging your arms in the air, you pretty much gain extra distance, since pushing your arms out pretty much just gives you extra distance. Um, there's also other upgrades you can get in the game, like such as in the Wally mode, which in the later mountains, I didn't mention this earlier. In the later mountains, you come across seagulls, and the seagull is nicknamed Wally for some reason. But pretty much you get an entire game mode dedicated to Wally, where you pretty much go up every mountain, including Tempest, with a Wally following you around, which is kind of a really scary thing to think about, being on Tempest and having a seagull fly around and almost knocking you off. But there is just a bunch of other stuff in the game that I can't even begin to talk about, just because there's so much to this game. As well as the dev has talked about on Twitter how he is in the works of making a DLC for Peaks of Yore that is going to introduce new mountains and hopefully new mechanics and tools. So we'll just have to wait until that comes out. But overall, Peaks of Yore is fucking amazing. It is by far one of the best climbing games that you can get. And don't get me wrong, it is kind of pricey. It is about 20 bucks or so. But with sales going on, I would easily recommend anybody pick this game up if they're interested in this kind of game. Because I know these types of climbing games, like Getting Over at Peaks of Yore, stuff like that, they're not for everybody, and I totally respect that. But this game just has so much more content to those other games, whereas with those games, it's like you climb the mountain once and you're done. With Peaks of Yore, there is so much content in the game to keep you going, even way after you beat Solemn Tempest. And it's just very fun. The gameplay is absolutely amazing, and I love everything about this game. So overall, Peaks of Yore, I think, is the best climbing game ever released. And I highly recommend anybody pick this game up, as it has so many little things to it, and it even has little extra things like the option to have color or a little black and white feature, which is cool, but I don't really recommend playing that because with that thing on the entire time, because it can kind of mess you up with knowing where the next rocks are, because everything's black and white. But overall, Peaks of Yore is by far one of the best climbing games, period. And it has such a nice learning curve, to the point where when you get to Solemn Tempest, you have pretty much everything you need, and you have learned everything up to the game by that point. So you should be pushed for success, basically. So if anybody hasn't seen Peaks of Yore, I totally recommend you pick it up. Even if you don't want to pick it up now and you want to wait until on sale, until it goes on sale, you can totally see other videos of people playing the game, because the game is fantastic. And the community in the game is really, really nice. I've looked over a bunch of different forums about learning about new mechanics and stuff in the game, and a lot of people in the community are just really nice. It's a very chilled out community, because everybody just likes climbing mountains. So it's a very fun game, and keep in mind as well, the developer is just one guy. It's just one guy, and this is basically a really big project of his. And to the creator of the game, if he's watching, which I doubt it, I hope you keep pushing with this game and add more content, because this game is absolutely amazing. I love everything the developers have done here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Peaks of Yore is a really good game. If you want to see more videos about Peaks of Yore, let me know in the comments, because I definitely really enjoyed this game, and I would love to talk about it or even play it on YouTube at some point, because this game just deserves a lot more attention than what it's getting. Because the first time I ever heard about this game was from Astral Spiff, who played the hardest mountain, or supposedly the hardest mountain, Emir's Shadow, and that was immediately got me hooked. That was what immediately got me hooked on the game, because I just loved the concept of the game. And actually seeing the game in person, it's even better than what I would have ever imagined a game to be. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video on Peaks of Yore. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Let me know once again if you want to see more Peaks of Yore, or if you have any other games that you want me to do little reviews on like this, because I know I've done reviews on other games in the past, and I love doing videos like this. I know it's been a little bit since I've posted a video recently, and I do apologize for that. I have been streaming a little bit recently on YouTube as well, so if you don't mind and you want to check those out, you can as well. But hopefully I will be getting back to video content soon. There's just been a lot of stuff going on. But anyways, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.